All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. As Caleb mentioned, so courteously, my name is Gavin Pham. I'm a design researcher at Salesforce, and really excited to talk to you today about design thinking and rapid prototyping. So I know the frame that Keela gave was more relative to the coding track. I myself graduated with a bachelor's in computer science and then gravitated towards design thinking. I ended up getting a master's in design thinking and innovation. And so really the two go together. So when you think about code, it's not just sit next to the computer and punch a bunch of numbers in. There's a lot more than that, and a lot of what makes a good product and makes something that is actually tangible, something that users will actually like, is some of that upfront strategy as well as like continuous refinement over time. So a lot of that I'll be talking about today. And feel free if you have any comments or questions or anything, just drop them in the chat. I'm a pretty casual guy, so hopefully this will be a fun presentation to watch. So let's get started. So design thinking, rapid prototyping, I like to call it the proven process of solving problems. I'll get into that a little bit more in a second, but in general, design thinking is it's a lot more than just that like short phrase. I mentioned it earlier, but oh yes, wonderful. I mentioned it earlier, but so design thinking is something that I got a master's in. It was hosted under the engineering school, so it's sort of the mix between what I would call like a engineering field with a lot more like hard science behind it, as well as a little bit of like the softness and upfront thought patterns that you need to be able to create a good product. So let's dive in. We'll talk about it. So as I mentioned, my name is Gavin Pham. I work for Salesforce. I've been working there for about year and a half now. We have a really awesome location out in Dallas, and been just stoked to be part of the community and spend time with y'all. If y'all are not familiar with Salesforce, we're the world's #1 CRM. Feel free to reach out to me afterward if you have any questions. But we are really looking forward to making a bigger impact in Dallas and being having a better relationship with those of y'all in the city. So I myself, as Keela mentioned, have been in Dallas for quite a while now, as many of my coworkers have been as well. A ton of us were hired in the local area, so a lot of us are locals. A lot of us have the boots, we got the hats, and we're living that lifestyle. So I'm in it as much as y'all are. Really excited to just be here and be part of this. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to make a note of this in the chat, and I can try and answer them. Cool. So what is design thinking? I know you've probably heard it a couple of ways and a couple of different times. Sometimes you'll hear it in like user-centered design, human-centered design. There's a lot of different words that cover a lot of the same methodology and practice. I'll kind of give my personal opinion on it. I will say that there's no particular correct way to define it. A lot of people define it in a lot of different ways. So when you think about design thinking, like I mentioned, it's a practice and it's also a mindset. So understanding the duality of those two and making sure that there's a way for you to practice it, not just once, but several times and continue to iterate again and again. That's what makes this a really, really powerful like toolkit almost in your toolbox. So it kind of goes hand in hand with rapid prototyping. I know that's also part of this talk. I'll talk about that more in a minute, but for the near term, let's take a second to just like learn, who else defines design thinking as within their work stream. So this is David Kelly. He's the founder of IDEO and D School, arguably one of the creators of design thinking as we know it, human-centered design. And design thinking, in his words, design thinking is all about unlocking potential and building creative confidence. So there's a lot to unpack there. The words creative confidence is something that mean quite a lot to me, as well as David Kelly has written an entire book about it. It's really exciting, interesting stuff. It's not just for designers, it's for everyone. So being able to unlock potential and wear all the hats that you need to wear. Like I mentioned earlier, I've come from both a computer science background and a design and innovation background. So you can kind of mix and match what you need for the different times and use those different skills and tool sets to really accomplish a problem or find a good solution, front to end. Another definition of design thinking out there is from Chris Conley, who's the founder of Gravity Tank, which is a company that we acquired quite a while back. Design thinking is applying innovation strategies based on human insight. And so this is kind of a different definition from what David Kelley gave, but they sort of orbit around the same thing. So in this case, it's applying those innovation strategies based on what you know about actual people. So one of the things that makes me, the most excited about design thinking in this methodology is to really understand people at the end, because people are central to anything that we're doing. Almost everything that you can do, any technology that you have, any product that you're ever making, will at some point come into the hands of a user. So understanding your user, empathizing with them, and then using that information to fuel a better product or a better solution. Maybe the solution is actually something that you didn't even think about at all, and you had to talk to your users about first. That's one of the big important things of design thinking. So understanding the strategies behind that and the ways to get that's a lot of what design thinking kind of tries to uplift, is to make sure that those tools and those different methods are ready and available for people to use. And so with those two quotes, I think what interests me and excites me is that design thinking is both a process and a mindset. Like I'd mentioned earlier, in my personal background, I got an education on design thinking in an engineering school. And so that's kind of where the process comes in, but it is also a mindset. It's very squishy. We like to say it's like cutting fog. It's almost impossible to know when you have something roped around, but eventually it does start to make sense as you chip away at it. So there's a lot to unpack here, and I'll kind of go into that in a second, but design thinking is a process. You have to go through several different modes, often in a nonlinear way. It's difficult to visualize something in a nonlinear way, so it is a little bit linear here, but the gist of it is there are these 5 steps. A lot of times you'll see other people who have created maybe a double diamond. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the double diamond pattern, or other ways to visualize design thinking. At the end of the day, it's totally fine. A lot of different people have different ways of defining it. I personally kind of vibe with this definition, so it's just what I think. Anyone else can feel free to add a comment or disagree. That's totally cool. So with these 5 steps, I'll kind of go into them real briefly because we'll come back to them in a second. But you have to start by empathizing, you define, you ideate, you prototype, and you test. And at any point, you might find yourself going back. Maybe you're prototyping and you're like, oh, wait a minute, we don't understand the user as well we thought we did. The things that we thought were criteria for success were actually not defined correctly. So we need to go back and maybe do some more interviews or send out some more surveys, that kind of stuff. So at any point in the time, this process, you just have to know where you are in it. So being very explicit on that and understanding, with you and your colleagues or anyone that you're going on this adventure with, you have to know at what part of the process are we and what are we trying to do here. So something that you might see in empathize might come up again in ideate. So wow, that's a really cool idea. I have this great, interesting observation. I have this great idea, and then you kind of ideate on it. So you can continue to move through this process and kind of record the information as needed. So that's kind of why you see, if you Google design thinking, you'll see sticky notes all over the place. I have a billion of them in my apartment right now. And that's where sticky notes kind of become the backbone of design thinking, is because capturing and making sure that you're tracking all this information at one step to the next, and then maybe backwards, so you can find whatever it is that you need. It's always important to capture these things. So sticky notes, often seen as big part of design thinking. It's less about the sticky note. It's more about the information that it carries and the modularity of that. So you can bring it forward, you can bring it back throughout the process. And so another different way to visualize this is that there is a life cycle. So not sure if y'all have seen the double diamond framework. If you haven't, definitely go check it out. It's all over the place on the internet. And the double diamond kind of refers to the methods of diverging and then converging. So it's kind of turns into a diamond shape there. And so in the discover phase, for example, you'll see that there's a part in that phase where you go very broad. You get generative, you ask a lot of questions, you try and really explore the space. And then afterwards, you take that information and you refine, and so you start to converge. So within this life cycle of design thinking, you're constantly growing, and then you're taking that information and you're condensing. And so again, just knowing where you are in that process and understanding with among you and your colleagues, making sure that you're all aligned on the goal at the part of time. So say we're doing that discovery. At what point am I going to say, oh, okay, I think we know a lot of things. We've talked to a lot of people, but we haven't had enough time to synthesize or to do analysis. And then you have to make sure that you and your coworkers or anyone you're working with are aligned on the same methodology and the part in the process where you need to start to condense. And likewise, it's a mindset. So earlier when I said design thinking is a process and a mindset, in the second part, we'll kind of talk very briefly about like the different qualities of thought as you're going through the process. So at any point in this, or at any part in these different stages, you're going to be thinking about these different things. So this first one here is focus on human values. So understanding your user needs is the core basis of design thinking. Earlier on in my career, at least, we often refer to design thinking more so as human-centered design because it is so human-centered. Everything that you're doing, the human is the base part of what you're trying to create as a solution. And so understanding your users' needs and making sure that you're doing everything you can to fundamentally understand them, not just have them agree with the things that you think are their needs, but watching them, following how they act, things that make them excited, things that cause them pain. Maybe if you're trying to innovate, I guess like washers and dryers, for example, then you would probably want to watch them like do a load of laundry. Just ask them, how are you doing that? And so understanding their needs and seeing where they're coming from is the biggest part of design thinking. Another thing is to embrace experimentation. So being curious and making to learn. A lot of different parts in this process rely on getting really broad and going, diverging, like we saw in the double diamond. So if you have a chance among you and your coworkers, even just like to write this on a piece of paper and stick it on the wall, say like, I will not judge others' opinions here. A lot of what's going on is very experimental. Design thinking is, a close, I would say like brother or sister to the scientific method almost. So embracing experimentation, seeing the other options that are out there, whether they're good or not, you can always measure that later on. But accepting that there are a lot of different options at any part of the process is very important. And I mentioned it a couple times, but understanding which mode you're in during the process, just be mindful of that, making sure that you're aligned with anyone else who is working with you on what you're trying to do, what the goal is of any activity that you're working on. A bias towards action to create things and moving forward. And this is where rapid prototyping really comes into play. Making things and having something there to react to is always really exciting. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Radical collaboration. This is honestly what makes me the most excited. Getting diverse perspectives and being able to work with people without barriers in the way. This is one of the things that makes this to me like very much my calling, because there's a lot of different ways that you can engage with people, and just being there in a way that is present, in a way that is respectful. It's always exciting to do. I'll use an example of like body storming. Body storming, excuse me, is a methodology that we like to use, which you literally like get up, you like potentially put on a costume, or you put on like a name tag that says like, my name is like Sophia, and I am a like 36-year-old shopper at this particular restaurant, and then you have to like act out what the way that Sophia would act, and then your coworkers are there to observe, and then see if like there's any like weirdness with the prototype that you made, or like any observations or thoughts that people might have where you could learn from. So having an opportunity just like, totally go wild, be improvisational, that type of work is super fun and honestly really informative. You learn a lot from it. So craft clarity, draw it, eliminate the illusion of agreement. I love drawing things. I would always recommend have a whiteboard, have sticky notes, have like a good strong Sharpie where you can just like go up against a big piece of paper and draw whatever it is that you're thinking. Oftentimes this comes up in rapid prototyping. You'll see people who literally like, I have like a bunch of paper stacks next to me where it's just like a UI where you're like, I think it needs to have this box and the toolbar needs to be here. There's a button here that says da 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 da. And all of that kind of information, having it visually, most people honestly learn better that way. So not just talking about it, but capturing everything, whether it's on a sticky note, on a piece of paper, any form that you can keep that is physical, that allows people to really intake that information quickly. That is key to the process. And at any point in the process, making a drawing so that people are following along. And lastly, I kind of mentioned this, but show don't tell. Having a prototype is so incredibly useful. So whether that's a piece of paper with a drawing on it, or it could be all the way to, like, let's say I have a phone and I literally can just take, I'm breaking script here, but I can take like one of my sticky notes here. If this is my phone, and I just like draw, like, bam, you got a prototype. You can draw a UI on this and say, hey, mom, like take a picture, or like take a Sunday to look at this. Try this app out. Like, pretend this is an app. Press these buttons. What would you do here? So that kind of information is super helpful, and you can watch your users do something literally with just a piece of paper. You don't have to build something out all the way to a functional prototype. You don't even have to have it as like a clean UI. You can have something that is very basic that still allows you to learn things. So finding that minimal viable product that is enough where you can just start to learn things. Thank you, Keela. I know I love wasting sticky notes. You can learn a lot from those kind of things. So being able to do that and taking a second to just make something for people to react to, always super strong and important. So now you might be thinking, where can I use design thinking? And the answer is a lot of places. Products, software systems, tools. I won't read it off the list, but y'all can see this here. There's a million places where you can get design thinking and utilize that to create something good. Because at the end of the day, it's anywhere there's people. People are the center of any problem. Whether you're trying to find a solution for banking or skyscrapers, architecture, anything. At the end of the day, somebody's using that. Somebody's living there. Somebody's working there, etc. So finding what that person wants at that particular part of time is what the critical piece is. So we don't design nouns, we design verbs. And so I'm not making a product to blah, 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 blah. I'm making a way for people to interact with their customers in a more fulfilling way. So thinking about the verb, what is your customer trying to do? Another framework that comes to mind is jobs to be done. What is the job that they're trying to accomplish? What verb is there? Why are they trying to do it? What are they thinking about at the time? It's not about the noun. It's never about the thing. It's about how that thing interacts with a person. So the verb is always the basis of anything that you're trying to design around. So here's a great example of one thought pattern that might come up in design thinking. So oftentimes I'll hear people say something akin to design a base. And so when you think about that, I'll give you a second to just mentally do this exercise with me. Design a vase. Like if you have a piece of paper next to you, draw it out. If you have, if you don't, just think about what a vase might look like to you. It probably looks like this or something similar to this. And that's totally cool. A lot of people, when you think about a vase, probably gonna look something like that. Maybe the color might be different, but generally the shape is there. But what if I framed it in a different way? Design a better way for people to enjoy flowers in their home. Now the problem's a lot bigger, or the space is a lot bigger. So you could do anything with that. You could have like flowers that hang from the ceiling or something like that. So it's not a vase anymore necessarily. You're sort of breaking the constraints there. And you're thinking about a different way for people to enjoy flowers in their home. So you can now think about how would my mom like to enjoy flowers? I don't know. I'd probably have to go ask her. There's probably very specific ways in which I might like to enjoy flowers, but you have to think about what does the user want? What are they trying to do? How does enjoying flowers differ from person to person? I do see a question in the chat. What if making extra money is what the owner wants instead of making a better human experience? Ooh, that is a great question. I'll pause where I am on the slides because I think I have a sort of a kind of an answer to that. I don't know if it's necessary to answer it 100%. But making extra money is an outcome of making a really good product. So there's plenty of other documentation out there that I can't or won't necessarily try to speak to, but a lot of what a good product does is actually create money. Like if you're making something that is good that people actually want, you're going to sell more. Money will come naturally. Exactly. That is 100% what I think, and I definitely agree with that. I brought it up earlier, but jobs to be done. I would really encourage you to like check out that framework. I don't think I'll have time to go through the whole story, but Clayton M. Christensen wrote this really awesome framework called Jobs to Be Done with him and his team, where I think McDonald's had tasked him to sell more McFlurries. And so he's like, okay, that's cool. Let's figure out a way to sell more McFlurries. And so he and his team found like different patterns. McDonald's worked with them to like, add chocolate to it or add like sprinkles to it, anything that the customer might want. And then they did that, and they were like, "Oh, wait, we're not selling any more McFlurries. We're just making like different things. Where the price that or the money that we're making out of it is actually the exact same." And so they did this more research. They talked to people who were out buying McFlurries in the middle of the morning and asked, "What is this job?" or like, "Why are you What are you hiring this to do for you? What is the job to be done here?" And I'm sort of butchering it, but a lot of what the people were saying is that instead of buying a McFlurry like in the morning, they would be trying to find something to drink on the way to work. And so they, in the past, hired a bagel. They'd hired like like a Snickers bar. They'd hired any sort of like quick snack, but often that would leave crumbs, or it'd make them feel bad about their life choices if they ate a Snickers bar in the morning. And so they found for a milkshake, for example, you could drink one through a tiny little straw. It's not going to make a mess in your car. And so we found that the customer was trying to just drink something, eat something on their way to work that would sustain them for a good number of hours. And so really understanding the customer in that case, they were able to think about that, understand how they could reframe that, and they designed a better experience for people to get like a McFlurry in the morning specifically, and then marketed people more towards finding a meal replacement or something like that who might be looking for food in the morning, and they were able to sell more McFlurries that way. So again, it comes back to understanding the user and knowing, what are they trying to do? Why are they hiring your product in the first place? With a better product or a better solution or marketing to the right people in that particular case, you can, at the end, make a lot more money. So it's not the antithesis to it. It's more trying to understand the user at the end of the day. So I hope that kind of adds some more clarity there. I know that was sort of a tangent here. I'm going to keep going, but I'm happy to answer some more questions maybe at the end of this if I have some extra time. So again, designing a Evasa presupposes the answer, and then at the end, this keeps the focus on the end user experience. And so I'm probably not going to have a ton of time to go through the entire thing, but I'll sort of zoom through the different phases of design thinking and why this is actually a process at the end of the day. And so I showed this before, but we have the 5 stages here. I'll kind of start with the empathize. So empathize, who is your user? Really, who are they? Talk to them. And what's their name? What do they do? What are they about? What kind of music do they like? How do they spend their day on your product, on your platform? How many hours at a time? Really understand what makes them excited about, maybe going shopping or going to the laundromat or, picking up their kid from daycare. What brings them delight in that space? And then likewise, what causes them pain? Is there anything that is in their current day-to-day that is causing them to be frustrated or makes them spend more time? So different methodologies. Again, I'll try and emphasize that here, but in design thinking, it's all about knowing what tool to use at the right time. So if I'm trying to, put a nail in a piece of wood, I'm probably not going to use a screwdriver. At that point, I'm probably going to use a hammer. So the different methodologies here that are available are something that you might want to look into. There's plenty of research on the internet that can help to illuminate what this means. But in general, with the empathize phase, I'd really recommend in-depth interviewing, surveying, and just general observations. So if you can go into the space that you're designing for, spend some time there and understand what people are trying to do, it's a really great place to try or to start. Kind of an anecdotal story here. A really good friend of mine spent a good amount of time in his early 20s trying to create a better product for veterinarians. And so what he did was he just ask permission from a vet's office if, hey, can I like sit in your waiting room for a bit and just talk to people about why they're here, what their experience is, and then was able to find a way. Oh, now that I know more about the user, I've talked to them, I've asked them why they're there, I've asked them if there's anything I can do to like make the process a little more simple or like fun for them. Then understanding that and finding a way to innovate around that is really important. So literally just spend some time out there. I know right now I'd probably not recommend it, but if there's any way that you can find empathy for your user, whether it is some sort of video call, plenty of secondary resources out there, or past user research that has been done, steeping yourself in that and taking a time to understand what's out there. And then at that point, you want to start defining. So what is the data telling you? This could be qualitative, it can be quantitative. Understanding that kind of information and knowing what that actually means. So you might have like a huge pile of information that you need to sift through. Finding a way to take that down from a big mountain of information, lots of quotes, lots of different data points, and then turning that into insights. Often this is kind of the squishy part. Knowing when you need to think about things in a more like converging way. So again, earlier when we were talking about the double diamond, this is one of those parts where you're definitely converging and taking all that you know and turning that into something that is actionable. So in this space, you might try clustering, which is taking things that are similar to each other and just pushing them together. So if you're hearing in two separate places that some sort of insight, you can find things that are similar and then sort of group those together, draw a circle around it, and say some arbitrary insight around that information. Journey mapping, design principles, how might we questions. I'm probably not gonna have all the time to go through all of these, but feel free to just do some research on your own afterwards. These are some of the really key methodologies that I think make this a lot easier to perform it. It can be a very encompassing practice to do design thinking and human-centered design, but breaking it down into these different methodologies really helps to make it faster and easier. So in general, what you want to do is to take the information you have, to condense it, make it actually meaningful, turn it into insights, and then find some way to either visualize that or turn it into design principles, things that need to be true for any particular product that needs to be built in this space, or how might we questions. So questions that ask in what way you might fulfill those design principles. Ideation, brainstorming is another synonym to here. So use your imagination to go broad. Just think of a lot of different ways to come up with a solution in this space. So now that you know, and now that you empathize and define with the user, spend some time thinking about what you could do with that information. Brainstorming, insight combination sketching, storyboarding, these are all different ways of turning that into something a little bit more actionable. And prototyping, rapid prototyping, I've mentioned it a couple of different times already in this presentation, but I really, really want to just push this point. Take whatever chance you can to make it real. Don't be, a lot of what I like to call is like a sacrificial prototype is when you make something just for the sake of making it, just to get some feedback or some criticism from either your user or other people in the space who might be experts. Put that out there. Try and understand what is it that people want? What can you make? Often you don't need to make something more than just a piece of paper. You can mock an experience by like setting up a fake diner in your living room and have your family members test it out. Really awesome ways to just think about it and learn more there. Mock-ups, body storming, all different ways to better understand the prototype. And lastly, test. Probably not gonna have a ton of time to go through this, but there are plenty of different methodologies in this space. It sort of goes hand in hand with empathizing. It is, again, just research. You are doing more work to understand what your solution does or does not fulfill with the actual user. And so there's plenty of different frameworks here. There's surveys, measurement that you can do, KPIs, and then, again, interviewing that just understands better on the space of whether your product is or is not actually fulfilling the goal. So thank you again for joining me today. I think I'm right up on time. I apologize for going a little bit rapid at the end of that, but I hope this was informative. I hope this was helpful. Thank you everyone for joining me. I think I'm probably going to get kicked off now, but if there is any time for questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Not kicked off right yet, Gavin. You're still good. If there's questions, we'd be happy to, or Gavin will be happy to answer some.
Yeah, let me kind of go through this. Oh wow, that was so kind. Thank you. Great praise. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that was fantastic, Gavin.
Thank you.
I even had people text. I had people text me, and they're like, "Man, your camera looks so terrible next to Gavin's."
Thanks. That's very flattering. I see a question by Megan. Are there any North Texas groups to participate and collaborate with design thinkers? There are a couple. I know that. Oh gosh, what is it called? There is one run by SMU that is sort of the same grad school program that I was part of. It brings in a lot of different movers and shakers that are doing anything related to design thinking, and that type of work in North Texas. I do know that exists. I am so sorry, I cannot remember the name off the top of my head, but I do know that is a very prominent group so far. There are several other UX related organizations, though I'm not entirely sure if they're more of the design thinking mind. They do overlap quite a lot, and we have much love for each other, but sometimes the grammar and the language is a little bit different. Any recommendations on how to determine the proportion of time to spend on each 5? Ooh, that is a great question. This is in reference to Gail's question, how much time should be spent on any of the 5? And so with these here, it really depends. It's how much time that you're willing to put into it. I would say for a long drawn out experience of understanding and testing, let's say for empathizing, it could take anywhere from you could do it in a week. You could talk to 5 people, you could talk to 30 people. I'd probably recommend not talking to 30 people. Oftentimes you can get just enough information off of maybe 5 to 7 users. It really just depends. There's plenty of information on the internet that can detail how to scope how many users you need to talk to. Can do this in a week. Defining honestly can be done in a day. Depends on how much data you have. This is what I like to call dark room Chinese food. Get your friends together, get all your colleagues together, and literally just sit there and stare at sticky notes. I know right now it's a very difficult time to do that, so I would not recommend being in person for that. There's programs like Miro and Mural that do allow you to do virtual sticky noting and whiteboarding that I would recommend. And just spending some time steeped into that. I would say about a day for defining. Ideating, you could honestly do in the same session as defining. It might be a little draining to do it back to back. Keela, I know we've done that in the past, but you could spend, I would say, maybe another day here. It's like a strong brainstorming session. I would say make some coffee, get some cookies, and make it an exciting, fun thing. Prototyping, I would say similar to about a week. Spending some time just learning what else is out there. Again, it's going to be doing more user interviews, and oftentimes there's some upfront time in making a product or a prototype. If you're testing something that is small scale, it can be short. If you're testing something that is a lot more large scale or more built out, it might take a little more time. It just kind of depends on your product or your solution. Doesn't have to be a product. It could be an experience. It could be anything. Testing, again, it goes hand in hand, prototyping. You have to kick me off. That's totally cool.
I would love for this to continue. I'm so sorry that we got to keep it this short.
No worries.
Next time we will let Gavin continue to talk for 3 hours because he likes to do that. But hey, y'all. Next up, we do have domain-driven design with Charles from USAA. So if you are interested in that, which I think is a great segue from this rapid prototyping talk, head over to the track sessions, then click the What is DDD session, hop in there, and we are about to kick that one off.
All right. Well, thank you, Keela, for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Gavin. We really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll see y'all there.
Okie dokie. Bye, everyone. I'll try and answer some questions in either the chat or the Slack in a bit. Thank you, everyone.